Mentioned this many times. We find by Kabolas HaTorah, there were 600,000 males above the age of 20, besides the women and the children. It's quite a few people. And yet the Torah says when they camped at the foot of the mountain, it says, Vayichan in the singular. It doesn't say Vayachnu. But if you have millions of people, how do you say Vayichan rather than Vayachnu in the singular? So Rashi cites the Chazal, Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, as one individual united in mind, in feeling. That's why it's stated in the singular, not in the plural. That's famous Chazal. So we always point out, why is that important for us to know what the level of unity there was at the time of Kabolas HaTorah? Vayachnu, Vayichan, not Vayachnu. Why is that important? So evidently, what the Torah is telling us, that was a prerequisite for Kabolas HaTorah. Unless they were unified at that level, at that moment, they wouldn't have been qualified to receive the Torah. Now the question is why? Why was Vayichan, Ish Echad B'leiv Echad, why was that a prerequisite for Kabolas HaTorah? To be taken as HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Goy Kodosh, Amen Nifkar. Despite, if we would have said Nasav and Nishma, it wouldn't have been sufficient. They had to meet that criteria of Vayichan, the unification. So we explained then, which we see continuously from the Torah and from the Bali Musar. I'm talking about the Ramak, and it has to do with this week's Parsha, that why does a Jew have an obligation to emulate Hashem's characteristics? Walach b'drochov, ubo sidbok. Why? Mahu rachum, aftote rachum. We have to emulate Hashem's characteristics. Why? Because, as we always say, the greater the commonality, the greater the compatibility. By assuming Hashem's profile, we have greater relevance. We reflect His profile, the way He relates to this existence. When we speak about Atem Kriyim Odom, Hem Kriyim Odom, we're classified as Odom. The nation were not called Odom. As a result of Kabolas HaTorah, what's Odom? When Hashem created Odom, what did He say to the Malachim? Nasa Odom b'tzalmeinu b'musenu. Let us make man in our image and our form. What does that mean? HaKadosh Baruch has no image, He has no form. Hashem is what? Is Ein Sof, is infinite. So over there, the Mefarshim, the commentators explain, what does b'tzalmeinu b'musenu means? We're endowed with wisdom, and we have koach ha-bechira. A human being has the ability to make choices. And based on those choices, that will determine, as the Rambam says in Hilchos Tshuva, why is a person deserving when he makes the right choice? Because a person, when he's born, you're at the equidistant point between the right and the wrong. So why do you do right? Because you took the initiative to do right. So if you took the initiative, so the result of your choice is due to your initiative. Therefore, you're fully deserving of the reward. Echas v'sholem. If a person chooses to transgress, to sin, to be chodei, why did he sin? Because he made a choice to sin. As a result of that, the result of that initiative, the person has liability. That's the Ram Hilchos Tshuva. Okay? This is B'tzalmeinu b'musenu. The Jew is B'tzelem Elokim, because we're called Odom. Now, because we have that profile, so if we meet all the prerequisites, we reflect that Kadosh Baruch Hu, we're able to cleave to Him. Because in terms of profile, we have all those characteristics. Now we have to develop them. How do you develop them? Mahu HaTorah. Goy Kodosh. What is the basis for Kedusha? We find by Sinai, when the Shekhinah descended on the mountain, you weren't permitted to touch the mountain. The moment it ascended, it was an ordinary piece of rock. What determines Kedusha? It's where Hashem is. Wherever HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, that determines Kedusha. At the burning bush, at the snare, right? Shal lecha me'araglecha ki admas kodeshu. Because the Shekhinah was there. The moment the Shekhinah departs, it's not holy any longer. The Mishkan, when you traveled in the desert, the location of the Kodesh Kadoshim, all those various parts, the sanctuary. You weren't permitted to go there if you weren't the Kohen, if you were contaminated. What happened when they dismantled the Mishkan? That location of desert that previously was the location of the Kodesh Kadoshim and the Azorah and the sanctuary. What happened to it? That's only when the Shekhinah is there. If you dismantle the Mishkan, the Shekhinah is not there any longer. It reverts back to an ordinary location. That's what happens. How did we become a Goy Kodosh? We said Nasim Nishma, now you qualify to become Odom. You have to assume Hashem's character, which is his essence, is Echod. Echod. Echod means you have to be unified almost on an absolute level. Vayicham. The Torah is attesting to the fact that was a prerequisite to be taken as the Am HaNivchar, as the Goy Kodesh, to become the Mamlech's Kohen, the Goy Kodesh. That's why the Torah tells us, shares with us, what was the state of unity. It was singular, it was not plural. Atem nitzovim hayom kulchem. You nitzovim. When are you nitzovim? When do you stand firmly and with the permanence? If it's kulchem, if you're unified, the Fnei Hashem Elokechem. Because if you have that characteristic of unity, then you're reflecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Echod. The Maral writes that if you want to describe who's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his essence, he says Racham Chanun. It's not Hashem's essence. All those are his attributes, the way he relates to this existence. We have no idea who Hashem is. But one thing we do know, Hashem is Echod. Nothing exists outside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If Hashem is Ein Sof, Hashem is infinite, that means nothing outside God could exist. Hashem is not contained within a context of anything. He is the context. The Medrash says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is called Mokom. Baruch HaMokom Baruch Hu. Why? So the Medrash says, Hu Mekom Shel Olam Ve'eino Olam Mekom. So Rav Chaim Volozhin explains Nefesh HaChaim. What does that mean? Hu Mekom Shel Olam Ve'eino Olam Mekomo. You have a table. A table has a capacity to contain. Now, why does the world exist? Why does anything exist? Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wills its existence. The moment he ceases to will existence, we revert back to pre-existence, and what exists? Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what is the makom? What is the basis for all existence? HaKadosh Baruch Hu's willing existence. And that's the Chazal, Hu makom shel olam ein olam makomo. He is the basis, he's the location of the world, but the world is not his location. So that's it. So the Maral says, if you would want to describe what is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's only one word to use, Echod. There's no other way to describe Hashem. That's fact, he's Echod. All the other attributes that he has, that's the way it relates to HaKadosh, the way it relates to existence. But what he is, he's Echod. So therefore, when we assume his characteristic of Echod, how do we do that? Vayicham, atem nitzoma hayom kulchem. If it's kulchem, lefnei Hashem Elokechem, you united, then atem nitzovim. Because then you're reflecting HaKadosh Baruch Hu's characteristic of Echod. Ato Echod, Shimcha Echod, Mikamcha Yisrael, Goy Echod Boretz, right? Mincha, we say, Shabbos. Ato Echod, Shimcha Echod. Umi Kamcha Yisrael, Goy Echod Boretz. There's only one such people. We reflect the Echod. No other nation has that reflection of Echod. And that's why we are the Am Hashem. And that's why, for Sinas Chinam, the base of Israel was destroyed. The Sinas Chinam is what? Sinas Chinam is a fractionalization of Klal Yisrael. We're broken into parts. There's you and me. When it comes to Klal Yisrael, it has to be, it's us. It's Kulchem. And the Medrash says explicitly on this pasuk, Im atem, it's Kulchem atem nitzovim. If it's not Kulchem, ein atem nitzovim. The Chavetz Chaim cites the Yerushalmi regarding the laws of Shmiras HaLoshen, the Lashon Hara. The Yerushalmi says that Achav was an evil king. Achav killed many of the Nevi'im. Ovadya Novi, he took 100 Nevi'im, he He put 50 in one cave, 50 in another cave. And that's why the war was able to continue. Otherwise, Achav and his wife would have killed all the prophets. The Yerushalmi says when the armies of Achav would go to battle, they would come back, not one casualty. The Chayolim of David HaMelech, David's armies, when they go to battle, they'd have casualties. So the Yerushalmi asks why Achav's armies had no casualties. They had some kind of divine protection, and David's didn't have the divine protection. So the Yerushalmi answers because David, there was HaTorah. They spoke Lashon Hara. Achav, the people, even though they were idolaters, they were pagans, whatever they were, they did not speak Lashon Hara. Where do we see they didn't speak Lashon Hara? That there was the Avas Yisrael, there was that unification, because he says, the Yerushalmi, how is it possible? Ovadia was unknown to Achav that he was a Nabi. If Achav would have known who he would have killed him. And that's why he was able to do what he did. If you have 100 prophets, 50, they have to be fed, they have to be supported, they have to be accommodated. How does word not get out and word not get back to Achav that these people are being hidden? And he should have killed them. You know why? Because no Jew would speak about any Jew if there would be a negative consequence as a result of sharing that information. So the Jews kept mum. That was an indication of the Avos Yisrael. So because they had that Avos Yisrael, they had that unification, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they merited that divine protection. David HaMelech's armies, the Jews, in that time, they spoke Lashon Hara. How do you speak Lashon Hara? So the Chofetz Chaim, everybody justifies. It's a mitzvah, it's a this, it's a that. It's a mitzvah when you speak about the other person. When they say the same about you, you say, all of a sudden it becomes not a mitzvah. Rambam says, the Chofetz Chaim writes, V'afto recho kamocha. Person says, but he's this, he's that. So you say to her, what about if they speak about you? Would they want you? Because that's not true. Or they're exaggerating it. You mean the other person, no exaggeration, it's okay. When they speak about you, it's not okay. So it's clearly a breach of After Chamocha. So clearly, when you speak Lashon Hara, you see it's a breach in the unification. Because if you saw your fellas, you see yourself, you don't speak about it. So that was Achov. Therefore, they merited the divine protection. David is whatever they were, as special as they were, but they had this Achilles heel. They had this problem. They had this deficiency. But that deficiency is so major because that affects the whole profile. You're not reflecting the Achdus of Hashem. Therefore, they didn't merit that divine protection. So over here, the Baal HaTurim points out, Atem nitzov ma'yom kilchem. You look at the Baal HaTurim, Yederech shneim b'Sinai v'yisyatzu b'tachtis sohor. Using the same language. V'yisyatzu, they stood at the foot of the mountain. Kach losh bo, right? Bo b'loshen omar kan atem nitzovim, identically. Same thing, but it's even more than that. They're entering into a bris. Sinai was a bris. This is a replication of the bris of Sinai. Entering again, making the bris. Just as that bris, it was nitzovim, yisatzvu, tachta sahor, atem nitzovim. So therefore, we have to have the same characteristics have to be in place to be able that the bris should be as effective as the bris at Sinai. Therefore, it's kulchem for that reason. Medrash says that if you take a twig and you want to snap it, you can snap it easily. But if you take a bunch of twigs, you can't break that bunch. Why? Because they're all together. Same thing. Individually, each one of us could be actually prosecuted and can be negated easily. But if it's kulchem, if you're united, the schus of that unity is something which takes on a permanence, nothing can remove that. That's the kulchem. I was just thinking as I'm telling you the Medrash, the Gemara says in Tainis, Eitz Chaim Hi Lamar Zikin Bo. The Torah is Eitz Chaim Hi Lamar Zikin Bo. So the Medrash said, the Gemara says in Tainis, just as if when you have an ember, one ember lights the other twigs, identically Torah, one person ignites the other one. Everyone's madlik the other. When are you madlik the other? If there's a connection. If you're connected, we're madlik one another. And that's Eitz Chaim Hila Machzikabo. The Torah is the eights. When is it an eights? If you madlikim. If we have that connection, one another, we illuminate, we ignite one another, then we become one large fire. What happens if we detached? Each ember, what happens eventually? It just fizzles out, burns out, nothing. It's the same idea. The measure compares it to a twig. A twig can be snapped easily. You take that bunch together, you can't break that bunch.
Rabbi.